It's no secret plenty of rugby players don't represent their country of birth. For example, in 2015, when Japan beat South Africa in the Rugby World Cup, Tongan-born Amanaki Murphy passed the ball to New Zealand-born Khan Hisketh to seal the game. And even one of the most iconic Wallabies legends, David Pocock, famed for his pilfering and play as an open-side flanker, was in fact born in Zimbabwe. There's a huge number of players at the Six Nations not representing their country of birth. In this video, however, I've narrowed it down to the high-profile, interesting players that the Southern Hemispheres' big three, the Wallabies, Springboks and All Blacks, all wish they still had in their ranks. Starting off with Mack Hansen, who represents Ireland. It wasn't that long ago I made a video about Mack Hansen being one of the Wallabies' bolters while playing for the under-20s. Born in Australia's capital with an iconic Australian look, rocking both the mullet and moustache, he was struggling to get consistent game time with the Brumbies. His coach at the time, now Wallabies assistant coach Dan McKellar, encouraged Hansen to go play rugby overseas to grow his experience as a player before returning, a decision McKellar would now ultimately regret. Within a year of moving to Ireland, he had joined the international side, eligible due to his Irish mother, and is now the complete package for the top-ranked side in the world.
I couldn't be prouder to be Irish, so yeah.
Every line break, intelligent kick and try just rubs salt into the wounds of every Wallabies fan. Moving on to Scotland's inside centre, Sione Tuipulotu. Growing up in Frankston, a rough area of Melbourne, Australia, he had 3 seasons at the Rebels but didn't get much of a crack, only playing 11 games. It's crazy to think he was never really given a chance here while in Australia, but he was still pretty young at the time. The reasons for this are similar to Hansen. He was sitting behind Wallabies inside centres Reece Hodge and Matt Toomua at the Rebels. In the Under-20 World Cup while representing Australia, he actually versed current international teammates Xander Fagerson, Jamie Ritchie and Darcy Graham. After a stint in Japan, Tuipulotu was offered a contract for the Glasgow Warriors, which he saw as another avenue to play rugby at the highest level. Given his eligibility due to having a Scottish grandmother, he jumped at the opportunity. I don't think he would get a start in the Wallabies top 15, but he would definitely feature in the World Cup squad and really bolstered the depth of our inside centres. A quick special shout out to some other Australian players in the Six Nations. Jack Dempsey, who actually had 14 caps for the Wallabies and featured in the last World Cup. Finlay Bealham, representing Ireland and actually started as a tight head prop last weekend, giving the dirtiest pass which led to a try. Now, I'm not surprised at all by how many New Zealanders are playing abroad, but I am surprised with how many South Africans could have been Springboks. Scotland's try-scoring machine, Duhan van der Merwe, who lit up the Six Nations in round 1, regularly represented South Africa at junior levels before making the international switch later on in his career. He did try to crack it in South African rugby, but struggled trying to get game time even in the Currie Cup behind very experienced Super Rugby wingers. What makes this situation very different is his brother Aka actually earned 3 caps with the Springboks. Now, we all have our different thoughts about players representing foreign countries, but I would hate to imagine a world where we don't see Duhan van der Merwe playing international rugby. And besides, the depth of wingers in South African rugby is actually insane, which is why Scotland's other winger, Kyle Steyn, is also South African. His story is a little different though. With a Scottish mother and never representing South Africa at junior levels, he moved to Scotland after a couple of years of trying to make it in the Currie Cup in South Africa, where he was suddenly given an opportunity to play with the Scotland Sevens team. From here he made the move to Glasgow and never really looked back. He's pretty versatile in the back line, and if he wasn't starting he'd be very handy to have on the bench. Besides wingers, the massive Paul Valemsa is a Grand Slam winning lock for France, who has been a mainstay during their unbelievable winning streak which ended last weekend. He openly talks about his childhood dream of playing for the Springboks, but South African rugby put this out of his reach. He was hoping to make it into the 2015 World Cup squad and missed out on a massive 80-player training squad. This was assigned to test his rugby skills abroad and left for France with the intention to return. Former South African coach Jake White convinced him to sign with Montpellier, which he is now in his 7th season with. Valemsa has joked in interviews that South African rugby doesn't need him and he doesn't need them, which I can't help to agree with as they already have a stack of world-class locks. Similar to the others though, it wouldn't hurt having him pushing for a jersey with his current form. Now there's also WP Nell, who I remember quite well from when he used to run around for the Cheetahs in Super Rugby. Seriously, he must be getting pretty old now, I was still in high school. Rob Herring, who has been the second in line hooker to Dan Sheehan for Ireland, actually earning a start last weekend against France, and then there's Pierre Skoman, the starting loosehead for Scotland, and a couple of other players. Would any of these players actually get a run with the Springboks? You could argue that every position at the Springboks is really stacked, but you could also make the point that these guys are playing for some of the top teams in world rugby at the moment. I'm keen to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And now we'll move on to the All Blacks. It's really strange seeing how many players leave New Zealand and go on to kickstart their careers. An absolute great example of this is Bundy Archie. Those in the Southern Hemisphere remember Bundy Archie as the Chiefs inside centre who filled the shoes of a departing Sonny Bill Williams to help them achieve back-to-back Super Rugby titles. While proving himself as a classy player, he never really was given an opportunity, sitting behind the likes of Ma'a Nonu and Ryan Crotty. Archie openly shares his reason for moving to Ireland was to have a crack at international rugby, in which he has achieved while also raising a family and making Ireland his home. While he's getting towards the end of his career, he's still a regular, either starting or on the bench for world number 1 Ireland, and is playing a position the All Blacks have really struggled to find a locked-in starter for. Just like Bundy Archie, James Lowe represented the Chiefs in Super Rugby and is now playing for Ireland. Besides from being a great finisher, there's just something special about James Lowe which makes him so exciting to watch and a fan favourite no matter where he plays. Sitting behind a never-ending talent pool of outside backs in New Zealand, Lowe saw his only option of playing international footy to try and crack it overseas. He made the most of his relocation and played for Ireland only a week after becoming eligible. He's currently boasting some pretty impressive stats for Ireland. 8 tries in 17 games and a 76% win record, not bad at all. With his current form and an all-round game, he would definitely be pushing a starting spot at the All Blacks. The third Irish player that New Zealanders probably would prefer to be home at the moment is Jamison Gibson Park. He never really was able to climb the ranks in New Zealand rugby, sitting behind Piri Wipu at the Blues and then moved to the Hurricanes to find himself behind TJ Perenara. I actually couldn't believe when I first found out he was playing international rugby because he really was nothing more than a fringe player who just played his role in Super Rugby off the bench. And he's definitely exceeded expectations. He clears the ball from the ruck just as quick as the best nines in the world. On top of that, he's able to give this quick delivery time after time in one of the most running, attacking sides in world rugby. A few other notable mentions include the legendary Marco Vunipola, who didn't actually spend too long in New Zealand after being born, Weenie Antonio, prop for France, and Scottish squad members Simon Bergen and Sean Maitland. All of these players wouldn't be where they are today without receiving the coaching, development and opportunities in their adopted countries. Just quickly, I reckon the Wallabies would improve the most out of these 3 countries if they were able to get their hands on Mac Hansen or Sione Tuipulotu, both in positions where depth is really needed and certainty. Then the All Blacks. I feel they would really benefit from having Bundy Archie and James Lowe available for selection, especially with the World Cup approaching. Then the Springboks. While Van der Merwe, Steyn and Willemse are all awesome players, I'm not sure they would add too much to the current Springboks 23. Let me know what you reckon and thanks for watching.